2 days and counting till the polls open. We have a roundtable of reporters and analysts here to break down this exciting election season. Also, every candidate is talking about education. We have some experts here who say they have suggestions for the next administration, whoever that might be. You're watching The Real Story. I'm Lori Perez. In 2 days, we will say farewell to all the political ads and the mailers as we head to the polls and make some choices. Today, we have assembled a group of reporters and analysts who've been covering the candidates for you, hopefully helping you with your decision. From the Courant, Capitol Bureau Chief Chris Keating and reporter Daniela Altimari, reporter Christine Stuart of Connecticut News Junkie, and Pat Scully of Scully Communications. They are all here to help us with this discussion. Thanks, everyone, for being here today.
Thank you.
I guess let's start off with the governor's race. The latest polls put those neck in neck. Comments or thoughts about why that has become such a tight race?
Well, it's a tight race. I mean, Republicans have held the governor's office for almost 3 decades now. So Connecticut does seem to like the balance between a Democratic legislature and a Republican governor. The polls are tight, though, because this is Malloy's second time. And I think that as he's gone along, he's become a better candidate. And, you know, anything could happen this year.
I also think it's an incredibly well-financed competition between the two. Foley self-financing and Malloy, for the first time a governor, being publicly financed, qualifying for the public finance reform program. So I think with so much money out there, they're certainly getting their messages through and they're cementing their positions. It couldn't be more of a clear choice between the two, and it seems to be right down the middle thus far.
Yeah, it seems to be clearly they're beating each other up on the both of them have negative commercials going, whether it's about the bib company or it's about Curly's Diner down in Stamford. Whatever it is, there's a lot of negativity out there. Some of the polls in the past, the poll in the primary, for example, wasn't particularly accurate down at the end. But basically all of the polls show that it's very, very close when you factor in the margin of error.
And I was going to say that Malloy has gotten some criticism as of late about his demeanor perhaps being a little meaner. Would you agree with that, or?
I've definitely heard that from Democrats, actually. Democrats who have been watching the debates very closely. The debates and the television commercials for the average voter is basically how they know these people. Mm-hmm. So the debates are very, very important. Other than the debates and the commercials, it's kind of rare that the average voter actually meets any of these people who are running. So many people are making their decisions completely based on the mailers at their home, the commercials, and the debates.
I think it's also has to do with their style. I mean, Malloy is a former prosecutor. That's how he conducts himself in the debates. He almost overwhelms Foley as far as his demeanor, his intenseness, and his passion comes through, while Foley's more of a laid-back guy. It's kind of just the way they are.
And, of course, President Clinton is now coming in to help out Malloy. I don't know, thoughts on how that will help, or will that help?
Well, that's going to be Sunday night, as you know, and that will be that is basically to stir up the base.
Yes.
At that point, you're not raising any money,
Yeah.
and Malloy is publicly financed, so that's not even an issue. That's basically to wake everybody up, energize everybody, and get the base going, and basically get positive news coverage in Monday's newspaper. So, yes, any candidate would like a former president to come in for them, absolutely.
And at this point, it is about getting out the vote. I mean, we're past the financing, as Chris said, and when you bring a former president as popular as Bill Clinton with the approval ratings that he does, it fires up the base, and that's what each candidate needs.
Well, what's interesting is Congressman Larson said earlier this week that he thinks Clinton... he wants to bring Clinton to New Britain or Waterbury to help out U.S. Representative Chris Murphy. And that might be a better use of Clinton's time. But he hasn't gotten anywhere with the party leadership yet.
Yeah, we should talk about the Chris Murphy race and how tight that has become.
It's become tight. It's the 5th district. They're always tight. They're always
Right.
pretty intense and sometimes a little nasty, and it's definitely living up to that this year.
And Caligari has run, I thought, he's been on the show a couple times, and he's run a good campaign.
Well, they both run good campaigns. They both run aggressive campaigns, but you know, there's a lot at stake, I think, for both of them.
The 5th District's also seen a big influx of third-party outside the district money coming in for advertisements, and in fact the station here took down one particular one against Murphy because they couldn't back up their claims. And Murphy is personally upset about outside forces coming in, and of course he claims you don't know where the money's coming from. It's sort of a shadowy group with a nice name. They come in and throw the money at it, so the 5th District is a little unique in that sense as well.
Yeah, and the 5th District has always swung back and forth. Obviously, right now it's essentially a combination of the 5th and the 6th Districts. However, if you go way back, the 5th, the old 5th with Waterbury, had Rowland had it, and Gary Franks had it. A lot of Republicans had it. Nancy Johnson had the combined district. Jim Maloney had it for a piece. So it has swung back and forth as the different waves happen. And 06 and 08 were Democratic waves, and 2010 is supposed to be a Republican wave, and that's how it gets close.
And is that going to be what we see, you think, with Jim Himes?
That's definitely the Himes race. The Himes-DiBasello race is definitely very close also. And, if you're going to see any Republican wave, you'll see it down there.
Daniela, what are you watching in that race?
In the 4th or in the 5th?
In the 4th.
Well, I mean, as Chris said, that's another bellwether, and I think it's interesting what's at stake there for the Republicans is, can they regain a foothold in New England or not? I mean, they currently don't have much of a presence. The sort of moderate wing has been chased out, and folks like Nancy Johnson and Chris Shays no longer hold office. So I think this will be a real test for the Republican Party. Nationally, supposedly they're going to have a good year, but how they do in New England, I think, will be really interesting.
I think the difference between Himes in the 4th and Murphy in the 5th is that Himes is sort of distanced himself from the party line as far as the extending the Bush tax cuts. He wants to extend them all, not just to the middle class. Murphy, meanwhile, is standing his ground and staying true to the Democratic line, so to speak, nationally. So you have Himes who's recognizing that he's in trouble and sort of trying to go his own way. Murphy, meanwhile, is sticking more to the Democratic line, but also has sort of said, I'm an independent guy.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how that'll turn out.
And I know that in that race, particularly in the last election, Bridgeport played a huge role in the turnout, and President Obama, of course, is coming to Bridgeport, and they're expecting a lot of people to show up for that.
Right, and one thing you have to remember with Himes, Himes is a Rhodes Scholar, an ex-Goldman Sachs guy. He fits in with the people down in Lower Fairfield County, and you can't be too much against the Bush tax cuts because those are the people who got them. People in New Canaan, Darien, Greenwich, Weston, Westport are the ones who got the high-end Bush tax cuts. So it's a little difficult for somebody like him to just come out completely against that, whereas you could get away with that in New Britain or Meriden or somewhere. You can't get away with it in New Canaan.
Right. All right.
Just strategically, Himes is a first-term incumbent, and that is traditionally where, if you're going to so-called take out an incumbent, that's the time to do it, the first term.
Right. Okay, well, we have a lot more to talk about, including several lawsuits. Up next, more election previews.